Hello and welcome to the latest thrilling installment of Chat DPS, where this week Robert's going to be exploring some of the social media age verification items that have come up in the news. We're relying on ABC for this, but in short, social media age verification possible, but laden with risks, according to this article, and laden and this in this landmark study. The government has released the full findings of a landmark study into age assurance technology 100 days out from the implementation date for its social media ban for under 16s. The study found that it was technologically possible to assess a user's age to a reasonable degree of confidence in a variety of ways, but that every way included risks and shortcomings. So, what's next? Well, the government and the e-safety commissioner will release the details of the requirements for social media platforms in the coming weeks, ahead of the ban's commencement in December. As revealed by parliamentary findings in June, the authors concluded that age can be assessed to a reasonable degree of confidence in a variety of ways, but the report did not identify a clear best approach and found risks and shortcomings associated with all methods. Robert, what are some of the approaches that are going to be considered here?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one, Nick, and I'm going to try not to get on, a stump and start ranting. Um, but so this is to do with the Online Safety Act and amendments that were made late last year, pushed through very quickly by the Labour government. And basically, as you mentioned, the idea is to prevent under 16s from getting an account with certain social media platforms, and that includes Facebook, Snapchat, YouTube. Quite controversially, has been included in that. So a number of platforms. Basically, what the government's trying to do is prevent doom scrolling, so preventing under 16s from getting tracked by the algorithms, the dangerous algorithms, and so it's really just about delaying their ability to go onto these sites and get accounts, doom scroll, comment, and then potentially be subject to bullying and all those sorts of things. So at a higher level, you can sort of see some merit in it. But the government, in typical fashion, has in its toolkit just a bag full of hammers, and it just really it just sort of picks out which size hammer to use. And in this case, basically, that the hammer is all about just pushing this risk onto the social media platforms and say, you guys sort it out. Where, of course, there's nuance to everything, and there's things that you could do in terms of encouraging, either expressly or indirectly, platforms to do a bit better in terms of managing how young people interact with their platforms. There is some talk about parental controls in this report, but there's certainly things that could be looked at there. So there's other things you can do, but no, they've chosen just to come up with the ban and tell the social media organizations to go sort out how they'll go around doing age verification. So this report, yeah, as you mentioned, there was a preliminary report back in June, and the final one's now come out, and it's basically said, yeah, this is possible, and we think that cybersecurity is pretty good, and privacy is pretty good. Yes, there's some flaws here. It's kind of interesting. So this was commissioned by a UK consultancy, um, and we might touch on this later. So they're experts in age verification and age assurance. So they've certainly got the credentials. I didn't have to say, I looked through the project team. I wasn't immediately able to find anyone with actual cybersecurity capabilities. So some of the comments about that this is secure, all of these systems are secure, is a little bit questionable. Pushing the privacy responsibilities onto the social media platforms is questionable. So there's some high level risks, but if you look at the main approaches that they looked at, so the first one was age verification, and so this is all about, generally speaking, you verify somebody based on some sort of ID that proves date of birth. But interestingly, The act itself, or the amendment to the act, says that social media platforms cannot use government issued ID. So if you've got a kid, the typical ID that you would have is a birth certificate and a passport. Can't use those. So what does that leave? School ID? Not sure. So first of all, you've straight off the bat, you've limited the ability to use age verification through ID, because there's what ID do children carry around other than maybe their school ID? I don't know. Their rugby league club membership. I'm not quite sure. So I think there's going to be some challenges there in terms of what ID is going to be used. I think part of this problem is I don't think
Mm.
they've really thought this through. And I think with all of these technologies, the question becomes, well, you can create fake IDs, and so what are the capabilities of these technologies from actually being able to detect fake IDs, if that's one way of doing it. And look, the report generally sort of said, look, everything's feasible. There are some risks here, but technologically there's no barriers to implementing any of these things. So that's age verification. The second one was age estimation. And this was about basically using biometric data to identify somebody's age. So this might be somebody uses their camera and essentially does a selfie or some sort of video to identify their face. And we've actually seen examples of this in the UK. So now, again, the report says that the technology is feasible, but again, it can be spoofed. So touching on that UK example, we've seen examples where people will use a character from a video game and hold their phone up to that, and then get the video. And sometimes the part of the verification process might be to open and close your mouth, and they'll get the video game character to open and close their mouth, and then they identify as an adult. So there's clearly technological issues which are already being seen through the UK's rollout of similar sort of act. So that was the second one. The third one is age inference, and this is where you can look at behaviour. So so they can look at things like email and how long you've had an email account. So that might be able to sort of you might be able to infer from that how old the person is from how old their email account is, but also their behaviour online. So the language they use online, and their behaviour. So for example, if they're looking at videos of Teletubbies and Baby Shark, well, maybe they're under 16, or maybe they're an adult with young kids. Don't know. But so it's looking at those sorts of behaviours. But again, as I just pointed out, you don't know. You can make mistakes, and with age inference, the risk there is that you're asking social media organisations to build up a profile of your behaviours online, and then to keep that safe. And one of the privacy risks that they pointed out is that, and we see this elsewhere. We see this in some of the major data breaches. Is that organizations will hold on to data longer than you need to, just in case it gets challenged down the line. And so, which goes completely against the provisions of the Privacy Act. So, so all sorts of risks. And like I say, it's missing the context of what's happening in the UK. And in the UK, slightly different in that it applies to over 18s, and it's about more broadly trying to limit people seeing content which is violent or sexual nature or whatever it might be, and getting people to verify their age based on that. And what it's led to is a massive increase in people getting VPNs, which have their own risks to individuals, because some of these VPNs contain malware.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of issues there, but people are circumventing the bans in the UK, and they'll follow a similar path here. So look, these things are never going to be 100% effective, but I think that the government is really brute forcing this through. And this report that's come out just really helps things along the way. So look, it's not going to prevent the ban coming in place, but the question is going to be, Yeah, what's how is it going to be implemented? From a social media platform point of view, they have to demonstrate reasonable steps. So they have to put something in place. There's a big fine attached if they don't do this, $50 million fine. So they need to put something in place. But clearly there's going to be all sorts of gaps. And then, like I say, there's security risk, there's privacy risk, there's all sorts of things going on here.
Yeah, the thing is, just before it goes over to hand over to Adam, I mean, there's a couple of
Mm,
things here. I mean, one of the things is the fact that we've actually had a discussion over the last several weeks about the fact that, that Scott Farquhar quote around, sort of like moving at the speed of technology rather than the speed of bureaucracy. It seems like they've gone completely arse about face here and gone for a completely immature technology, something that is not proven, and implementing something that nobody
well,
knows how it works or whatever. I mean, it's dangerous, surely.
the report argues that all of these technologies are mature and they are proven. The report just doesn't go into the details.
Oh,
So yeah.
yeah. I had experience of using Dragon speech technology when it first came out, and I've got to tell you, yes, it's mature now, but when we first used it, it was horrible. And I think we're in the same kind of sort of like thing as that, really. I mean, Adam, I mean, you must have
Mm,
some thoughts around this as well, right?
Yeah, this is interesting. So from my perspective, there's also, if I was to put on the old tinfoil hat and be the proper cybersecurity guy here, um, I mean, the only way forward since they've taken out the fact of verification through a government ID would be to have an electronic ID system owned by the government, right? And they're starting to do that now with the electronic driver's license, those type of things. So having that one ID and then globalizing it from there. That's a big concern with a lot of this as it goes through. I will say from building my own AI company and going through it, the age inference stuff around behavioral patterns. Um, there's lots of kids that are mature and lots of adults that are immature, and that is not currently something that has a failure rate that I would consider acceptable to use to find out the age of somebody across the end. They just shot themselves in the foot because they weren't comfortable with the risk of having government issued ID numbers housed anywhere outside of government.
Wow. Yeah, but I mean, the contradictions here are stark, right? I mean, you've got to be able to prove it, but you can't use a government issued ID. I mean, what the hell is that
mm.
about? I mean, even
Including a
I've
digital,
had to log
including a
into.
digital, including a digital ID as well. That's also excluded.
Yeah.
That's
So
crazy
the
though. I
the
mean, I've had
thing
to log in. I've had to log into the UK government site before now. I mean, their passport, even whether it's an Australian passport, which I do hold these days, sort of, and I don't actually hold a UK passport anymore. But yeah, I mean, it's a crazy world in which they're saying that you can't actually use a government issued passport. How else are you meant to be able to prove who you are and what you're doing?
The other thing too is, and what's boggling from my perspective is why they can't just open up the same verification they have to prove you're you to rego your car, for example. Like all you
Yeah.
do is you put your details into the window, it registers it off the database on their side, no one holds it, and they go, "Yes, you are this person," and you might have to take a picture of yourself or something.
But again, I'm guessing that at the back of all of this is some kind of, the social media platforms are holding data now that is validated, verified, and tested. And I'm not being funny or anything, but they've not got the world's best record at being, respectful of people's privacy, right? I mean, Cambridge
No.
Analytica. you know,
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
In fairness, I will say people give up all of that information freely, right? So, like I use social media an awful lot in a program called Maltego to be able to understand people, who they are, understand what their passwords will likely be, all of that type of stuff. It's all freely available on the internet. So
is it really? It's just crazy, right? I mean, sort of like, we're just making it sort of like easy pickings now, I guess, is the point, right? I thought we were meant to be trying to do something else. Hey ho. Anyway, moving on. So, one of the biggest stories that we've witnessed in the last couple of months, and this is growing, is the API threat. And there was an API threat report that came out over the last week. It was, I think this has been done by Cyber Angel. And in this detailed report, it outlines some key areas of concern. So in the first instance, I wanted to sort of like say, look, what are APIs? And API is an application programming interface. And it's designed to connect systems, enable features, and simplify complexity where it exists, obviously. But that same simplicity can hide serious security gaps, especially when APIs are left undocumented, misconfigured, or exposed to the public internet. And some examples of how the API threat is growing is 99% of organizations report API security incidents. ChatGPT tools are exploiting via SSRF. I'll let you explain what SSRF is, Adam, if you don't mind. Human error is led to API key leak. So the causes of the 2025 API failures were authentication just isn't enough, which in light of our first story, sort of like is a little bit of a problem, right? Governance and visibility are lagging, sorry, and authorization gaps are just about everywhere. So that's what this report's doing, and obviously our beautiful government is off and running, doing wonderful things with it. Adam, I heard a story this week that one of the larger sort of enterprise grade organizations, top 100 companies in Australia, had a little bit of a sort of like an epiphany moment, and it sort of like realized that it wasn't really guarding any of its APIs. Went off and found out that it would actually need, after a long and exhaustive, sort of study, about 30,000 of these things that actually needed to be put into place, and they needed protection in some way, shape, or form.
Allegedly.
30,000. That's sort of painting a picture for me is if that's your area of weakness, and allegedly, Robert, for Robert's benefit,
Okay.
sort of like we're about to see a big court case land itself, and it's going to play a big part in that, allegedly. So I mean, what is the risk for API? I mean, this sounds like to me like data protection is always the poor cousin when it comes down to protecting the pound jewels. APIs just sounds to me like an accident waiting to happen.
API is the middleman. So if you think of your API kind of like the police officer that is getting traffic, to go each way, that's ultimately what an API is. The issue a lot of the times are people have gotten to a point and in a programming perspective where they see APIs as just the glue that hangs everything together. And SSRF, by the way, is server-side request forgeries. So what that means, though, in layman's terms, is usually the API that's out on the internet that the customer will use will have all of the safeguards on it. It'll have loads and loads of safeguards. But what will happen is they'll do the usual cycle in tech of once you start having APIs talk to each other inside, they'll trust each other. I trust that you're the right person to ask this. I trust that you have access. And those access controls from API to API, so long as it's signed, I go, yeah, it was written by the right people. And I go, cool, here, have the data you're asking for. The problem with that is you can then change the way it asks by crafting it through server-side request forgeries, thus the forgery part, change what's in there as to what it's asking for, and then pull that data out. And more often than not, if you have a talk to any of the offensive security guys in your teams or your extended network, this is where APIs really get you. And it's because we don't sit there and set up actual architectures. And I don't mean use code language A and it has to be written this way. I mean, this is how we do authentication and this is how we do encryption. And, these are the building blocks of an API and this is our architecture on how they work. And if you can't make that, then you can't have an API. Authentication and authorization, right? This is how we do it. Once you
Yeah.
have that in place and your team understands it, this risk starts to slow down. The problem is, to your point previously, we're going at the speed of technology.
Yeah. I suppose in some respects it's frightening. I mean, sort of go back to that bureaucracy comment, Robert. What I'm thinking here is the fact that, APIs, there's been a proliferation quite clearly, yeah, systems
Hmm.
integration and all the other
Hmm.
bits and pieces. I need this widget to speak to this tool. I need all these things to happen. Um, I mean, is this a question of us moving too fast, or is it a question of us not, really understanding what the landscape is going to be once we've actually done it?
I think it's a question of lack of governance and lack of understanding of your technical
Yeah.
assets. In the same way that we harp on about data and understanding what data you have and where it is, same sort of thing. It's another asset, another technical asset. What APIs do you have, and what are the controls around that? And like everything, it starts
Right.
with a framework, a governance framework. Okay, so what is our API policy? How do we design these APIs? What is the security around them? What are the protocols that we're following? And are people actually doing that? So like everything else, people need to be trained up. You need processes and procedures to follow, and people need to do that. So you can't just be throwing out APIs, going, "Oh, it's a great idea. Well, I think we need this thing to talk to this thing," or if somebody external wants to query this, let's throw up an API. I mean, clearly APIs are really important to the way businesses
Right.
function these days. But hey, can we do this in a controlled manner where we actually think about the design?
Yep.
Oh, he's
Oh,
dropped.
not anymore.
Well, anyway, I guess that was Chat DPS for this week. I'd like to thank Robert and Adam for coming along, and look forward to catching up with you all very soon.
Take care, all.